Welcome back, everyone. Let me just make sure I'm actually broadcasting. Looks good. Let's take a look at metadata. With FME, you can read and write geodatabase metadata. You can also make updates to the metadata during the translation. On page 58, we see some of the requirements for writing metadata. Basically, you need a feature that contains the XML metadata information, and set the GeoDB type format attribute on that feature to be GeoDB metadata. Then the metadata will be handled by the geodatabase writer automatically. We'll see this in practice in example 9 on page 59. Okay, so we have a shape data set for bike routes. The metadata for the shapefiles is stored as a separate file with an XML extension. In this example, we're going to read in the bike route data, and we're going to load it into GeoDatabase, and at the same time, write in the metadata stored in the XML file into the GeoDatabase as well. So first of all, let's go into our catalog. And take a look at the destination dataset's existing metadata. Okay, so we're going to be writing this into the city data. Oh, looks like we don't really have much here, but bus routes. Nothing there currently. Let's see if we can see the metadata itself for our bike routes. Transit. Bike routes. One. And description. There we are. So this is the metadata that we currently have for the shape data. Tags, Austin city data, bike routes which are hilly, etc. So that's what we're going to be loading in. So let's create a new Workbench workspace. I'm going to start Generate Workspace. Let's save our previous workspace as example 8. We're going to read in our shape data set, and we're going to read in our bike routes H. Data, transit, bike routes, and we have our bike routes H. The writer, we're going to write out to our city data file geodatabase. So the translation as is would read in the bike routes and write it out to our bike routes geodatabase. Whenever you add in our feature type definition, it's always a good idea to double check. In this case, it's going to create a bike routes H feature class. Let's actually change that bike routes. There might be other bike routes we'll want to bring in later on. Now, although there is the XML bike routes, or the bike routes XML metadata file, that's not being read in by the shapefile reader. There's only a few formats where we can read in the XML metadata automatically. File geodatabase is one of them. But for other formats, such as shapefiles or GML files that have an associated XML document, metadata document, we will have to read that XML file in separately. Now, there are two ways that we can do this. My preferred way is to use this creator. So I'm going to add a creator. So the creator is just creating a feature. It's going to be a null feature. It has no attributes, no geometry. The purpose of the creator is to basically kickstart or bootstrap or initiate or fire off the next transformer, the attribute file reader. So the attribute file reader will read in a file and store its contents as an attribute. So I'm going to store GeoDB metadata. I'm going to store in the GeoDB metadata string format attribute the contents of my XML file. So I have my bike routes. And we're hiding our extensions. So it's saying that's an HTML, but I'm reasonably certain that's the XML. No, HTML. Let's go back in there. Bike routes H. Oh wait, it's under shape. XML. There we are. That's what happens if you don't set up the file browser beforehand. It helpfully hides extensions. So we want our bike routes H XML document. There we go. That looks much better. And the target encoding is going to be Unicode 8-bit. There we go. So it's reading in the contents of that file, storing its entire contents as this GeoDB metadata string. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when we send this feature that now has an attribute, the metadata, to the writer, we have to tell the writer that this is the metadata. To do that, we add another attribute creator. So an attribute creator, we're going to create a format attribute called GeoDB type. And its value is GeoDB metadata. So that tells the writer that this feature contains the metadata. We can just connect that in. So once you've done a bit of work, always save your workspace. Example 9. Let's make sure we're not currently viewing that data set. Refresh that. And now let's run the translation. Okay, so you can see we had 1,232 bike routes and we had one metadata feature being loaded in. Let's see, one there. And under catalog, Esri, city data, we have our bike routes. take a look at its properties, or actually item description. Oh wait, first of all we got to customize something to make sure it's reading in the metadata in the correct form. So under Customize, ArcMap Options, Metadata, metadata style is there we are, the 19139 metadata implementation specification. Let's apply that. Okay, so now we can right click on this, item description. And here's our metadata. Austin City data, bike routes which are hilly, etc. So question, what if the source is a feature class and not a shapefile? As long as that XML document exists, you can bring it in the same way. Basically, it applies that XML document to all of the data. Okay, let's do an advanced task. So that was a fairly straightforward one. We just took the XML data and just loaded it in. Now chances are you'd want to edit that metadata. So let's take a look at editing it. So first of all, let's take a look at it in a web browser. So let's see, data, transit, bike routes, and there's our XML document. We'll just double click on that to open it up. So in this we have our, let's see, where is it? A lot of information here. H. Just looking for the theme key. There we are. Theme key, Austin City data. We want to update this theme key to not just be Austin City data, but to be Austin City data bike routes. To do that, we're going to use a transformer called an XML updater. So back in our workspace, we are going to be writing this data back into our bike routes table. If we did it just as is, it would insert into the table, but it wouldn't actually change the XML. That's the metadata. That's already in there. So under the format attributes, we are going to want to drop the table. And then it will be recreated based on what we have here. So now in here we have our creator. We've read in our data, told it that it is metadata. Now we want to update that metadata. So I'm going to drop in an XML updater. Okay, so in the XML updater, the XML input is going to be text or an attribute. The XML text is our GeoDB metadata string. The resulting output we also want to be our GeoDB metadata string. So it's going to update the metadata string and store that as GeoDB metadata string. So it's going to overwrite our existing attribute with the new updated attribute. Now we actually want to set the update. So the update type, we want to replace the contents. The XML path, let's see, can we choose it through here? Okay. Metadata, ID info, keywords, theme key, it's the theme key that we want to edit. It's plain text. Now we're going to replace the theme key with Austin City Data dash bike routes. Now you'll notice that we have this update input port. The XML updater, it's actually usually expecting the updates to come in through there as opposed to us typing them in manually. Because we type them in manually, we don't need an update feature, but we still need it in order to fire off the transformer. Very similar to the attribute file reader. So we're just going to add another creator. Because if a feature doesn't come in through that update port, it just doesn't want to update. So let's save our workspace. Make sure we're not actively viewing the geodatabase. And we'll run the translation again. So let's take a look at what we've got. For our bike routes and description, we should have replaced Austin City Data with Austin City Data bike routes. And there we have it. Austin City Data, bike routes. Okay, some final notes on this workspace. Some things that you would want to do if you wanted to read in, say, all the shape files. Just as a reminder, from our desktop training course, we could change this to actually read in all the shape files. So that's changing the source data set. It will now read in all the shape files. Keep in mind that only bike routes H would actually go through the translation because that's what we have here. Bike routes H. We can tell it to bring in all the bike routes by setting a merge feature type. Because we're only reading in bike routes, we could set this to be everything. If you wanted to be more careful, we could set this to be bike routes star. So now this translation will read in all of the bike routes and apply that bike routes H metadata file. Now, because that's the bike routes H metadata file, you might also want to do some further updating to indicate that it's actually for all of the files being read in. Now, I did mention that there's another way of reading in that XML document. Instead of using the creator and the attribute file reader, we could actually bring in another reader. So we can add a reader, and the reader that we would want, you would think it would be the XML reader. It's not. The XML reader will read in and break this up based on the XML. Let's see, configuration. I don't believe there's any way to prevent that, although the flatten options might. But I don't believe so. What you'd actually want to use is a text reader, text file reader. I can choose my XML document, data, data. So I have my XML document. You have to tell it to show you all the files. It just wants to show text files. So there's my XML document. And under parameters, we can have this read whole file at once. Usually the text file reader will give you a separate feature for every line in the text file. If I tell it to read the whole file at once, it just takes the whole file and stores it as an attribute. So there's my text file there. Everything's being stored in this text line data attribute. But now I have to tell it that that's actually GeoDB metadata string. We could actually combine these two transformers. This is an attribute creator. We could get away with an attribute copier, I believe. We might be able to do both of those all in one. So in the attribute copier, I would copy text line and move that into GeoDB. GeoDB metadata string. And then I could set my GeoDB type. Actually, no, it's not the copier. It was the creator, sorry. So in the creator, I could copy my text line data and basically you can actually do it the other way around, sorry. GeoDB metadata string and set that to be my text line value. So basically you can replace these two transformers with a reader, and then you're taking the renaming and putting it in the attribute creator. So it slightly simplifies your workspace by one transformer. And that'll also work. Okay, so moving on. Let's take a quick look at the questions here. So on page 63, integrating FME and ArcGIS. So we'll be finishing off the day with this. Let's look at how FME further integrates into ArcGIS. In ArcGIS, you can create spatial ETL tools, which are simply FME Workbench workspaces embedded in ArcGIS as tools. You may notice over here that I got that failure. The reason why this failed is that I did not close my view here. So if you're writing out to your geodatabase and it fails, keep in mind that it does lock itself. I can minimize that and refresh. Then when I run that, you'll be able to see that actually work. Providing I typed in all the format attributes correctly. So anyways, back to the integrating FME and ArcGIS. You can create spatial ETL tools, which are just Workbench workspaces embedded in ArcGIS's tools. These spatial ETL tools can be used like any other tool, and can be used in Model Builder as well. We're going to take a look at that in example 10 on page 65. There's also a note here about Python, FME and Python. This is more of an issue with ArcGIS 10. If you're using 10.1, I believe this issue no longer applies. Okay, so let's take a look at using a spatial ETL tool. In our catalog, now I'm no expert with our catalog, so whenever I do this I end up having to create a couple of toolboxes. So I got my toolboxes. There's an FME toolbox. Oh, that makes it easy. So we have an FME ETL tool. Now, there are two ways that you can go about this. The first time that you do it, you have to go to New and create an FME ETL tool. After that, I typically just copy and paste the existing ETL tools and start from there. And then when you want to edit it, we just click on Edit. Let's do this from the start. So we'll go to New, FME ETL tool. So this runs us through the wizard. We start off by specifying what format we want. In this case, City has a data set of city parks in Map Info tab. So let's go to Map Info tab. And we'll choose our city parks. Destination format. This wants us to go out to an Esri shapefile. That's always an option. If you're integrating into a model, though, it's often easier to go out to a file geodatabase. So parameters, I don't like to use uppercase. There we go. Stack schema and finish. So what this does is it creates an FME ETL tool. Now you'll notice it called it FME ETL tool 2. There we go. I would not rename that while this is open. I think you could end up in a bad state that way. If you want to rename it, I would close this, go into catalog, then you can rename it. Rename, example 10. This is why typically if I'm creating a new workspace, I'll right click on this, copy and paste, and then rename my new ETL tool, and then go in and edit it. That's just my own personal workflow. So here's our workspace. As we saw before, we can change this to be city parks. Get rid of everything else. There we go. So we've cleaned that out. We want to add in or calculate our park area. So we'll use an area calculator. In the area calculator, we'll store the area as the attribute underscore area. We're going to call that park area. And then the destination, we'll add park area. These are attributes. Park area. And it's going to be a number of 16 and 2. Okay, so now we can save this. We could run it within this. That would create the shapefile. We can also run it from within our catalog. Just double click on example 10. You can choose the map info file that we want. We've already got it selected here. Destination folder. We never did set that within our workspace. So let's write this out to FME data, output, demo output. That should work. And let's run the translation. So you can see it running down here. If you double click on that, you can see the messages. Basically, that's the log coming out. So there's the translation log telling us what's happening. All looks good. So now, in our catalog, let's just close that results window. Catalog, folder connections, output, demo output. Demo output, and there's our city park shapefile. Let's remove it from here and drop it in. Here we can see that we have our park area generated. So that's running the ETL tool. You can also do that from within Model Builder itself. Just making sure that's saved. Let's try adding a model. New model. So I can take my example 10, drag and drop that in. Double click on the destination output here. Output. And now we can run our model, and that runs our workspace. There we go. So as you can see in the rest of this example, looks like I was supposed to open up an existing model, but I didn't actually see any there. We can, let's see, actually no wait, I can just add those. So I might as well show you how to do this. Now, if we wanted to make use of the output from a translation, and this could go out to file geodatabases or shapefiles, in order to connect it up to the next tool, what we typically have to do, because of the way that we're writing stuff out, is add in a select data tool. So under catalog, let's just see if I can remember where that is. It's under the over here. Data management. General. Select data. So under data management tools, general, there's select data. We can drag and drop that in, which makes it disappear. That's handy. There we go. Oh, come on, don't be like that. Select data. There we are. Select data. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And then we can connect those up. Once you've selected data, you can do other things to it. There we go. So now we can add our spatial index. Because you may have noticed, we don't create spatial indexes automatically when we write out the shapefiles. So let's see, it's under input data element to add spatial index. Let's see, say where that is. Data management indexes. Indexes. Add spatial index. There we go. So now when we run this, it'll create that shapefile and create the spatial index. And there we go. Okay. This will be done a bit ahead of schedule today. There's a few things I just wanted to review first. Earlier in the course, I just remembered the missing step. When we created the domain for city data, you notice it didn't show up here. The reason, I believe, is that when you create a domain, you've got to close ArcMap and reopen it. That should now give us our domain. I'm not entirely sure why you have to close ArcMap in order to see those domains, but that seems to have in the past kicked it loose. So we'll just give ArcMap a moment here to open up, and we'll see if that is correct or if the audience detection algorithm is working properly. Resources, Esri. There we are. So we have our diameter domain that we created with that translation, and there's all of the coded values. Now, in order for it to work properly, for whatever reason at the moment, let's see, that was, which one was that? Water distribution lines. We have to go into the properties of this. And there is the domains. So we have our diameter. There we are, domain. It's using diameter. I've seen times where that wasn't selected for whatever reason. Again, restarting ArcMap tends to kick that loose. So if you are not seeing the domains work properly, try restarting it. That should work now. Yesterday when I was trying it, it did bring it in, but the domain wasn't being mapped properly. But it looks like a restart of ArcMap gets everything working nicely. Okay, just a quick wrap up here. So for additional information about what we've seen here, you can always go to www.safe.com. At safe.com, you can go to Learning, Webinars. There should be a recording of this webinar showing up in here. If not, there are previous recordings of the Esri webinar. under webinars. I'll also be trying to post this to YouTube within the next day, and I'll send that out to all the attendees of this course. If you need to contact us for support, you can email support@safe.com, but a better place to go is FMEpedia, www.fmepedia.com. We've recently revamped FMEpedia. You can do a search for whatever you need. If that doesn't get you what you need, you can always click on this Request Support button. The reason why Request Support on FMEpedia is better than emailing support@safe.com is that it asks you all the appropriate questions that we're going to have to know, or know the answers to, in order to help you properly. If you do not get all this information, the first thing that you're going to receive is an email from us asking for all this information. The blog tells you about stuff which is new and exciting with the product. Help documentation, just a reminder, for whatever formats you're going to be using, please go to the Readers and Writers reference and read up on those particular formats. You don't have to memorize the manual, you don't even have to read it carefully, at least skim through it. So FMEpedia is the best place to go to. FME Talk. FME Talk is our Google discussion group. It is currently being slowly closed down in preference for the answers. So if you need to post a question, you can try going to the community answers and ask a question here. So that's in a replacement from FME Talk. FME Evangelist talks about the what's new and exciting in the product, what's coming up in the betas, and often has little articles written on particular transformers or tasks that people want to do. I highly recommend checking it out. We also have a number of YouTube videos on the FME channel, which you can subscribe to on YouTube. Again, anything that's new and exciting in the product, things which are coming out, you'll find short demonstration videos there. Course feedback, we will be sending out a feedback form once the course is over. Please let us know what you liked about the course, and especially what you didn't like about the course. We do try to change how we do the courses on a regular basis based on your feedback. So it's really helpful if you fill out the what impressed you, and especially helpful if you fill out the what didn't impress you parts of the course feedback form. Course certificates. If you need a certificate, please email train@safe.com. And I'll send that out to everyone here as a chat message. That's train@safe.com if you want a certificate. So thank you very much. We'll stay on the line just for a couple of minutes here to answer any questions that people type in. Any questions which are unanswered, we'll be sending out to the group as a follow-up email. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you found this course useful. Have yourself a good day.